about some the inspirational portion of this talk. Floor is yours, Dave.
All right. Hey, you bet. Does anybody else have anything else they want to discuss? Kind of had any questions that they are burning on them this week before we move on to the inspirational side? All right. Good. So our invited speaker today was Ryan North. He deals with the foster care program, and he's not on the line today. So we're gonna punt, and we're gonna try something slightly different. And I'm sure he'll be on the line in the next couple of weeks. He was having some car issues on Friday, and I wasn't sure if he'd make it today or not because of some issues on his weekend. So hopefully we'll see him in the next couple of weeks. And but this week I have adjusted a presentation that I gave to my daughter's youth group earlier this month on thankfulness. So since it's Thanksgiving, figured we'll just kind of use that one. So I'm going to start us off in a quick word of thanks since we're talking about thankfulness, and then we'll move on to the talk. Dear God, thank you so much for the opportunity to be in connection with everybody on the line today. Thanks for allowing us to be a part of your restorational work that you're doing. Thanks for allowing us to have opportunities to be amazed by nature and share that amazement with others. Help us to be quick to listen and slower to speak. Help us to be willing to be able to see through the eyes of others, and help us to be thoughtful and caring. Amen. All right. Let's see. There he is. Share screen. Sorry, you should have done this while we were talking about the other one. Go. Share screen. Okay. Let me know. I have a little bit of a lag, so if you don't mind letting me know when you can see the screen. Somebody give me a thumbs up or something.
Yeah, I can see it.
All right. So we're going to talk about thankfulness, awe, and dreams. This was, like I said, something I shared with our kids' youth group the other day. So if it's a little bit below your level, sorry about that. It was meant for middle schoolers and high schoolers. So am I thankful? It's kind of a question that I ask myself fairly regularly. Sometimes I feel thankful. Other times I feel pretty self-absorbed, or I feel pretty entitled. I remember a close friend of mine used to talk to me about kind of how they would be thankful. And they said, well, I always have this list for being thankful. If somebody does something nice, I'd like to kind of keep that on a list and then make sure that I repay their thankfulness with something from my list. And I always like to make sure that I have more people owe me something than that I'm thankful for. And I think in a lot of ways, that's the definition of entitlement. We do things and we figure, well, I did something really nice for somebody, so they kind of owe me something. And it may not exactly be thankfulness at all. The idea of being self-absorbed, being like, well, what can I get out of this? How can I manipulate this relationship so that it serves my purpose, generally doesn't lead me towards thankfulness. Am I entitled? Do I expect to get something because I've done something pretty good? So I've done 3 really good things, so I expect to get at least one nice thing in return, and then I'm mad if I get something bad. Do I feel self-made at times? If you feel self-made, if you feel like you pulled yourself up by your bootstraps, there's a pretty good chance that you're not being thankful at that time. All 3 of these things: self-absorbance, entitlement, and feeling kind of self-made or uber independent. These are all things that lead us away from thankfulness, and we struggle with it. We always struggle with this in our lives. I don't know anybody that at times isn't self-absorbed. It's really hard to wake up in the morning and not think of yourself first. Even when you have people that you love dearly next to you, you would expect that um, there's a good chance that you're still going to be thinking of yourself with the first things that you do in the morning, just because you wake up and that's where your brain's at. So uh, one of the researchers that deals with the idea of gratitude, he's supposed to be an expert in gratitude, and he's from the University of California, Davis. His name's Robert Emmons, and he talks about 4 different ways of dealing with thankfulness, and that they're related to well-being, pro-sociality, a spirituality, and a materialistic idea. And these are ways that we think of how thankfulness affects these aspects of our lives. So he says grateful people report a higher level of positive emotions, life satisfaction, vitality, optimism, low levels of depression and stress. The disposition towards gratitude appears to enhance pleasant feeling states more than it diminishes unpleasant emotions. Grateful people do not deny or ignore the negative aspects of life. So in other words, we have negative things that come by, but when we're grateful, we don't erase the fact that there's negative things or unpleasant stuff. We just enhance the idea that we feel okay with that. It's what people have talked about as a peace that passes understanding. It's this idea of being okay with something, even though it wasn't how I had wanted it to be.
It's kind of the difference between happiness and joy. Happiness can be a fleeting thing. It's a temporary emotion, but joy is something that exists or can exist regardless of your circumstances.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody that we love so dearly. She's kind of a family member, even though not exactly a family member. And when talked about the idea of really a desire in her life was trying to achieve happiness. And sometimes happiness, we don't realize if we don't know what joy is, we think happiness is related to materialistic things or social identity or other aspects, opposed to truly being something where we can have a joy that overcomes us, even though maybe there's something that was negative that wouldn't normally cause us happiness. People with a strong disposition towards gratitude have a capacity to be empathetic and take perspectives of others. So in other words, if we're truly thankful, we generally are going to be able to be more empathetic towards people, or be able to find a way to be pro-social towards others. In other words, we're going to be able to look past some of the faults that somebody did, and instead of being like, well, you just messed that one up yourself, pick yourself up by your bootstraps type of thing. We're willing to say, well, I could see what that would be like to come from that background, to have those situations that come to us. So, and this is a publication that was published in 2002. They're rated as more generous and more helpful by people in their social networks. So in other words, if somebody demonstrates thankfulness on a regular basis, they're generally considered more helpful. And like I said, this is University of California, Davis. This is not a spiritual institution, but what they said in this is that spirituality, those who regularly attend religious services or engage in religious activities such as prayer, reading religious materials, scores are more likely to be grateful. Grateful people are more likely to acknowledge a belief in interconnectedness of all life and a commitment to the responsibility to others. Gratitude does not require religious faith, but faith enhances the ability to be grateful. So we can be grateful without a kind of religious faith, but when we go back to the idea of emphasizing gratefulness, then it enhances our ability to be grateful because we're practicing something on a more regular basis. So
I feel like just being part of something. Sorry, Dave. I think just part of like being something like being part of something bigger than yourself, and realizing like that there are things that they're beyond yourself, and like again it helps with that perspective of like, okay, it's not necessarily just all about me. My perspective is not inward, it's outward, because I'm part of something that's bigger than me. And so I think when you have that, again, spiritual, it could be religious or otherwise, but when you're part of that, it helps keep things in perspective.
I agree. So that interconnectedness of life,
Mhm.
that concept is the same as kind of the humus, or the rich organic dirt or earth, if you will. So when we think of the word humic acid and humic soils in wetland restoration and wetland identification, we think of all that interconnectedness of stuff that is not quite yet soil becoming soil, the organisms between. It's this interconnectedness of everything. And it's interesting that word humus is also the root word for humility. So in Western culture, we use the word humility as saying, hey, we are a part of something, and we can be humble and know that everything is provided for us, and we're just a part of the interconnected world. In Eastern cultures and more ancient native cultures in the Western lands, we talk about an idea of groundedness, and that those are both related to this idea of interconnectedness. So the groundedness and humility are really about the same concept. It's this idea of knowing that I need the people next to me, and the people next to me need me, and I can be a part of what they're doing. But without this interconnectedness, we just can't operate the same way, and that there's a lack of purpose. And then the final one that Emin had talked about was gratefulness. Grateful individuals place less importance on material goods. They are less likely to judge their own and others' success in terms of possessions accumulated. They are less envious of others and are more likely to share their possessions with others relative to less grateful people. I think these are all really amazing things that we think about from a non-religious background of the value of thankfulness in this period. So I like this example of kind of thinking about am I thankful or are you thankful? So there's a dog that walked into a butcher shop, and he was carrying in his mouth a purse. He puts the purse down and sits in front of the meat case. "What is it, boy?" the butcher jokingly asked. "Want to buy some meat?" Dog goes, "Woof." Says the butcher. "What kind of meat? Liver, bacon, steak?" "Woof." The dog interrupts. "Oh, steak. Okay. How much steak do you want? Half a pound? A pound?" "Woof." "Oh, a pound of steak. Great." The butcher was so amazed. He wrapped up the meat. He finds the money in the dog's purse, puts the purse back in the dog's mouth, and the dog walks away. So, that's just my picture of the Muppet for the kids. So the butcher ends up following the dog and says, "This is a very unique dog. I'm gonna just follow this dog back to see what happened to this dog. What's happening here? Is this a circus dog? Why is this dog so well trained?" As the dog leaves, he decides to follow this dog. The dog enters into an apartment, climbs to the third floor, and begins scratching a door. With that, the door opens, and an angry man starts shouting and yelling at the dog and says, "Stop, stop, stop." And he's angry at this dog. So the butcher comes up, and he's looking at this, and he goes, well, "What are you doing? Why are you yelling at this dog? This dog, he's the most intelligent animal I've ever seen." And the guy behind the door goes, "Intelligent? This is the third time this week he's forgotten his key for the door." So this idea of entitlement and thankfulness, sometimes we forget, how blessed we are with situations because we expect something different. We expect the dog to bring back the key to open the door himself, so we don't have to get up and open the door.
And I think as Americans, we struggle with this a lot, because we have just about everything we could ever want, and in most cases, we could in 2 hours, I could pick up this rectangle and order something on my rectangle, and within 2 hours, it's sitting on my doorstep. And then so it's I think it's much harder to be grateful when you don't have a whole lot of physical needs, and that you can pretty much have whatever you want whenever you want.
Yep, I agree with that. And so, contrast story. Pam worked in downtown Chicago. Every morning she encountered a heavy-set middle-aged woman in a shabby coat, soliciting spare change in front of an old brick church. She greeted the lady every morning, and the lady smiled with a pleasant smile and said, "Good morning." Pam almost always gave her something. After almost a year of this routine, however, the woman in the shabby coat disappeared. Pam wondered what had happened to her. Then one beautiful day, she was in front of a church again, still wearing the same shabby coat. As Pam reached into her purse for the usual donation, the woman stopped her, thanked her, and stopped her. And the woman said, "Thank you for helping me all these days." She said, "You won't be seeing me here again, as I've found a job." With that, she reached into her bag and handed Pam a wrapped package. She had been standing at the old spot waiting, not for a handout, but for the people she recognized, so that she could give them each a donut. So thankfulness is the idea of being able to be overwhelmed by a sense of gratitude that you want to give towards others. And thankfulness and gratefulness is not related to how much you have. It's not related to how little you have. It's related to what's in your heart. Are you willing to give what little or how much that you have to others and care for others? So I'm going to read a story here from the Bible, Luke 17:11-19. Now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. He was going into a village. 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." When he saw them, he said, "Go show yourself to the priest." And as they went, they were cleansed. One of them, then when he saw he was healed, came back praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet, thanked him, and he was a Samaritan. This makes an assumption that the other ones were Jews at the time. A Samaritan and Jew were slightly different. Jesus asked, "Were not all of the 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except for this foreigner?" This foreigner, the way it's phrased, would say that the Samaritan was most likely the only foreigner, the only one that was not a Jew at the time. Then he said to him, "Rise up and go. Your faith has made you well." I think it's interesting. Thankfulness, sometimes when we're truly thankful, when we get something that we really wanted, how do we react when we find ourselves truly thankful? Do we react in a way that we just have to go back and give thanks, which leads to worship? Or do we react in a way that we're like, okay, got that one done, checked it off the list, now let's try to get something else? How do we try to leverage things when we're thankful? If we're trying to leverage something when we're thankful, then we're probably in the idea of entitlement, or probably looking at our own self-interest.
That's what I was going to say, Dave, is that, it's more about your perspective of yourself. As I imagine, some of those Jews were, maybe felt like they were owed, of being healed, or like they deserved it because of, who they were or where they came from, when in reality, we don't deserve or are entitled to anything. And then, so if you have that perspective, then when things happen to you, then, things are, things that are worthy of being thankful of. That's where that gratefulness comes from, because it's that overwhelming sense of, man, I like this is you're so thankful because maybe you feel like you didn't deserve it.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what I wonder too. If like the Jews, like you said, were just like, well, we kind of deserve this one. We knew the deliverer was going to come, and the Samaritan was just so unthankful. The other thing I think about is some of the other 9, they were just so excited and busy that they didn't stop to be thankful. They're like, well, I'm going to go show my family. I'm going to go look what happened to me and stuff. And they
Very
just kind of
true.
move
Yeah,
on.
it doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I would say that that's still a self-absorbance.
Mhm.
You're still self-absorbed at that time. And it makes sense. I mean, you went from being a leper to being cleansed, and you're going back to the priest to show yourself so that you can join your family. So I mean, there's something to be excited about.
Yeah.
But stopping
I've
for
met
thankfulness is important.
I've met people too that are, have fallen on hard times and are so resentful because of the situation, circumstance that they've found themselves in, that when they do receive help or, are reached out to, that they're so calloused or, to that, and that they can't accept that gratitude because of how resentful they are. And I know, like, lepers back in Jesus's time um, were treated very poorly. They weren't even allowed to be part of the community. They had to live outside of, whatever village or community they were associated with. And then Samaritans were even a step further, disassociated from, what was the, accepted people.
Yeah, I mean, for a leper, Josh, if you were walking into a community, you have to like call out the fact that you're a leper
Right.
when you're
Right.
walking near
Yep.
people that weren't.
Yep.
I mean, imagine that being like every time you
Right.
see somebody at a stream restoration conference, you'd have to yell out, "Weirdo, weirdo, weirdo!" coming.
And yeah, and I can see a situation in which over time, having dealt with that perspective, like that, you become resentful, and like and it's just, and you become so hardened to the world that you can't accept, just good deeds.
So, one of the things that I question myself and challenge the kids about is, am I more concerned about the gift that I was given, the cleansing, or the person that gave that gift? I think that's a good thought when we're talking about thankfulness is, am I more concerned about what somebody gave me or the fact that somebody would give me something at all?
Mm-hmm.
Do I always want more? So once I get done with one gift, I get a gift of cleansing. Now I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back to my family. I'm going to restore all these things. I'm going to do all this now. I'm going to do all this. I got more talents. I got more money. I got more gifts. I got more time. I can do a lot more things now. Do I always find myself wanting more, or am I able to be truly thankful for the little gifts that I have?
Another thing we really struggle with as Americans is, it's never enough.
Yeah. So do I take time to enjoy what I do have, though? So do I enjoy the stuff that I have? Do I enjoy the relationships that I have? Do I enjoy the God that I have, that's positioned in my life? Do I enjoy my family? Do I enjoy food, shelter, job? Do I enjoy a sense of awe? Do I enjoy the goals that I have in life? Do I enjoy my dreams that I have? Or do I always feel that I'm looking for more and I'm never quite able to completely be thankful for something because I'm always chasing something new? It's so we're going to talk a little bit about dreams. If you ever watched the Rapunzel movie, I have a dream, or Martin Luther King idea, I have a dream. So dreams, sometimes we think about what a dream is and we think about it kind of like a goal. But the one thing that I want to reference here is I don't think I have time for this video today, just because it's about a 5-minute video and I want to end just pretty early. But that's a pretty neat video. If you see on the screen, just type it in. A friend of mine had done inspirational songs in nature. So she shows this in pretty neat thing. But this sense of awe, an overwhelming feeling of reverence, admiration, fear, etc., produced by that which is grand, sublime, extremely powerful, or the like. So, awe is oh yeah, that's a good idea, Eric. Thanks. Put it in the chat. Let's see if I can do that. Put that in the chat. There we go. Let's see. Put it in the chat. There you go.
I feel like I'm being a negative Nelly this morning, but again, like, I feel like that's another thing we really struggle with, is being in a state of awe. Like, we have so much at our fingertips that sometimes we forget stop and really listen and pay attention to what truly is, awe inspiring. And that, in our language, I think has not helped us with that at all. Like the word awesome, like, is so overused, right? But in reality, that the definition of awesome is so much bigger than like, hey man, I just, got a free drink from the vending machine. Oh, that's awesome. No, that's really not awesome. Like, it's like, I mean, if you think about it in the literal definition of it, like that's not awesome. But there are things that are, and so it's almost like we've cheapened that word over time. But yeah, anyway.
So my favorite tire salesman dude was a guy named A.W. Tozer, and he said, "What comes to our mind when we think about God is the most important thing about us." And this wasn't limited to just one God. It's a capital G God, is meaning that it's when he talked about it, he originally talked about the God of Abraham. But the idea is that if we think about a God, that's the most important thing about us in our life. That changes how we look at other people. It changes kind of our moral compass. And people think about God in a lot of different ways. One of my favorite English dudes was a guy named C.S. Lewis, and he said, "It would seem that our Lord finds our desires not too strong, but too weak. We are half-hearted creatures, fooling about with drugs, alcohol, sex, ambition, when infinite joy is offered to us. Like an ignorant child, we want to go on making mud pies in a slum because we cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at sea. We are far too easily pleased." So both of these things are kind of dream big of what God could do, and realize that our dreams are generally never too large. A lot of times they're too small. Our desires are not too strong, they're too weak. So when I think about dreams, and this was sharing with the kids, how does our dreams change with our emotions? And I made kids wear hats for this. I'm not going to make you wear hats because that'd be weird virtually. But if you think about sadness, fear, joy, anger, disgust, just the standard emotions for the Inside Out movie, how does that change our emotion? How do our dreams change based on our emotion at the time? If I am overwhelmed by sadness, is my dream going to look different than if I'm overwhelmed by joy, or if I'm overwhelmed by anger? The guy that actually did the research and shared his research with the Pixar animation film group for Inside Out is a guy named Dochner Keltner. And Dochner Keltner is a PhD guy that specializes in awe. He wrote a recent book called, and there's a picture of him. He wrote a recent book that's called Awe. And he wanted to make a sixth emotion for it. And you actually see there's an Inside Out movie 2 coming in, and there are additional emotions, but he wanted to include the emotion of awe into the original Inside Out movie, but he couldn't figure out, and he's the world's expert, and he comes from a secular background at University of California, Berkeley, and he couldn't figure out if awe is an emotion or something bigger than emotion. But he's written an entire book on the value and the importance of awe in our life. So giving thanks for every dream of awe. So in other words, when we are overwhelmed by a sense of how small we are and how big or how much more complex something is, those are dreams that we can be thankful for. We can be thankful for the dream of awe. We can be thankful for these dreams and use them as a call to worship, just as the leper did. When he was truly thankful, he was able to go back and be at worship, or basically fall down at the feet of Jesus, because he was just so thankful for it. So if we're thankful for dreams that are big, these dreams of awe, then it can also be a call to worship. So 4 ways to think about thankfulness this week, and we'll actually finish on time, which is amazing. Enjoy what you have and share it. You don't need more. Get some turkey this week, but you don't really need the turkey. You don't need more. Stop living in comparison. You've been created uniquely for a purpose, and your purpose is different than anybody else's purpose. So stop trying to be like others. Learn to express thankfulness to others. So be interconnected with others and look side to side and realize, wow, I'm only here because I'm held in a spider web by a connection and relationship by somebody else that is so fragile, and be truly thankful for that. And allow yourself to be amazed or in awe. Awe is this sense of mystery. It's this sense of sublime. It's this sense of wonder. In Western cultures and Eastern cultures, we think of awe as being what is kind of divinely inspired, something that is bigger than what we could ever understand. So these were a couple questions we had for small groups. So I'll share them with you guys. If you want to screen capture them or anything, you can, or I can share them with you later if you want. But what are you thankful for this week? Can you be thankful even in illness, failures, broken relationships, heartbreak, disobedience? Can you truly find ways to be thankful? How can you express more thankfulness towards others this week? What disrupts your feelings of amazement or wonderness or awe and thankfulness in your life? Can you take a break from that activity this week? So is there something that makes you feel not so amazed or not so thankful? Take a break from it for a little bit. If that means it's sometimes your phone or a certain social media platform, just take 5-minute break from it meaningfully. Not that you just forgot it, but just try to say, I'm not going to look at that right now. I'm going to wait. Can you dream of God with all as bigger today than you have dreamed of God in the past? Can you have a dream that God is bigger and more powerful and more complex than you ever had before? So with that was our talk on thankfulness this week. I hope everybody enjoys their Thanksgiving. And I'll stay on the line for a little bit, and then I'll probably close in prayer in a couple of minutes. But I want to be respectful of everybody's time, and it's 7:01. So if you need to leave, and then we'll close in prayer in a little bit after some discussion. So.
Thanks, Dave. I think it's ironic that Americans celebrate our thankfulness through gluttony and sloth, that day. Have the food ready, make sure you eat too much, and lay on the couch, which I think inspires a lot of the discourse that people incur over that quote unquote celebration. Really true thankfulness, in my opinion, inspires us to service and to worship in service. And if we can insert that into our lives, and then the people around us will see that and follow that example over this season, Thanksgiving, as we lead into Christmas and other celebrations. But it's so oxymoronic. I think
when
there's
even
a picture
more so
of Americans when you look up oxymoron.
Even more so, Josh, taking it a step further, there's a movement. I've heard about it on NPR of a fairly substantial group of people who want to actually just get rid of the holiday that is Thanksgiving. The one mostly because of the history with the indigenous peoples and how really that what we did to them relative to us being quote unquote thankful. But and also because really starting a week before Halloween, we're already in Christmas mode, and so it's like let's not even worry about like this silly little holiday of like being thankful and giving to others.
Thanks taking. We can just have a new holiday called Thanks Taking.
But no, seriously, there is a movement of like why do we even have Thanksgiving? So it's like we as a culture, we have become so selfish that it's like we can't even yes, we are very slothful and gluttonous on that holiday, and intentionally so, but it's to the point where it's like, no, we're even gonna like just try and get rid of it altogether.
I think a good retort to that, good retort to that. Some people could get on board with that idea for a number of reasons. We get too many holidays. But I think a good retort to that would be like, let's bring the truth into Thanksgiving. Let's bring the truth of the story. Truthfully, what I hear from people is that the tribes were generous. They gave us everything. They kept moving west. They continued. They said, you don't have to take it from us. We'll give it. Why are you killing us to take it? We'll give it to you.
I know. That's an incredibly selfless act. And then we just, continue to, abuse and, essentially wipe that people group from the face of the earth.
Well, you know me, I'm really I'm an advocate for learning, my own personal learning about our indigenous history and native cultures. And I really truly feel like that's going to lead us toward better stewardship as well. That's one of the pieces or parts. In addition to advancing the message, you know, before we can advance the message of stewardship, we have to understand stewardship, which isn't just about doing something good for the stream. It's doing something good for the stream as a reflection of doing good for others and doing good for ourselves and realizing, you know, so it's just I learned this a long time ago, you know, 10 years ago. I was like invested in, you know, my pursuits and my goals and my self-made man, you know, mindset was all 100% in on one thing, on being a good engineer and a good consultant. But I learned there's this glass ceiling there, and realized that really the truth lies in spreading and diffusing that effort into more facets of my life. And sharing that, and it's really been an awakening for me.
Native Americans, you know, like talk about being good stewards of like the world and these resources that were given to us. They were any, you know, kind of the epitome of that, right? They managed, they were stewards of the ecosystem more so than we ever have been.
They were part of the ecosystem.
Right, exactly. And they accepted that. And going back earlier to like what Dave was saying, like, you know, being part of something bigger than you are gives you that sense of, it takes that sense of self away, right? It's not so much about me, is that it's about this larger thing that I'm a part of. And so when you have that perspective, when you don't focus so much on yourself, that's when your perspective changes, and you can be thankful and grateful, and you can realize like that, you know, it's right. It's not just about my career. It's not just about seeing how far I can climb, you know, the corporate ladder. It's I'm part of something that's way bigger than I can ever be.
Yeah, it's actually not at all about your career or your
At all, right? At all, right?
That's just the vessel. That's just the place you are. You know, that's just your ant job.
Absolutely.
I was blessed last month to be able to be in British Columbia at an Indigenous-led restoration conference, and I love the idea that they use, instead of the word stewardship for how to care for this, and they talk themselves as a guardian of nature. So they have a guardians program which talks about kind of how we deal with it, opposed to being a steward. Stewardship is more about lording over something. And the idea of being above the soil or above the humeric is the word that we use as hubris, which means pride. So when it comes to biblical reference, above the humeric is pride. So if we're above the earth looking down and lording over it, we kind of control that. If we're kind of in it as a part of it, then that's kind of the idea of being humble. So I think it's very interesting. The very start, one of the books that I've been going through for a couple of years, and it's not a great read, but I guess the guy's a pretty cool guy. It's a vote of confidence. Pope Francis's book, Laudio or a Care of Our Common Home. And basically it's the idea of how Pope Francis believes the Christ followers should look at a care of the environmental home that we share with others. And a lot of the ideas of how we care about things come from relationships that were structured after European ideas, and then put those European ideas into an idea of a biblical reference that it really wasn't even there. I mean, even the idea of how sometimes we use the word Lord with people groups in the Bible is more related to a feudal system than it was related to what the original Hebrew or Greek or Aramaic actually had said at the time, or what it would have said if that was the case. It was written in it. So, but
hey, you know, the Pope's going to. Oh, go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
That's one of the things you see early in Genesis, where it talks about the idea that humans are to to be over, but the idea is, are we over in a way that we lord over it, or are we a guardian of it, or a steward of the environment? So.
That the book that you mentioned, have you read that book?
I am one chapter from the end of it right now, and I can't say I read it because I don't think you're allowed to say you read something when you listen to it on tape, but it's a lot easier to get through it that way. So
would you recommend it?
Oh yeah,
I would recommend. Yeah,
okay.
it's been great work. I think Eric just off the line. Eric's reading it right now as well, and know that it is a non-religious book, but from my religious background, it constantly just points back to aha moments.
Right.
And it's amazing for me to see truth that comes through ways that are not the standard methods of finding truth. And the author, we have connections with him. We invite him to the Stream Restoration Conference this year, but he'll be in Europe, and he's shown an interest to kind of be involved with some speaking things related to stream restoration, because I do see one of the next big movements in stream restoration being related to the interpersonal idea of how do we deal with mental health treatment, how do we deal with building communities around natural spaces, and have people be in a more humble view of themselves by being amazed by all in nature. And I see that being a huge push in the next 10 to 20 years for ecosystem restoration, is more interpersonal, interconnective ideas. So
that's great.
Hey, did you guys hear that? I guess it was announced last week or so. The Pope's going to COP28.
No,
I did not hear that.
Yeah, dude.
Wow.
Seriously. Yeah.
That's great.
So he's like, I'm on video now. Whoa.
Yeah, video now.
Sorry. Yeah, he's gonna go to COP28 because he's commented on the state of affairs, of our global environment. And as Americans, we consume 7 times the amount. Our overconsumption is really a major contribution. We can consume 7 times the amount of the average not wealthy nation, and we can consume over twice as much as other developed nations. And he's pointing the finger and wagging it at us. No. And so yeah, he's going to be at COP28, and because it's important. It's important to him, and I think that's strong. For the Pope he's an I don't know. It's weird how he's an activist so much on this matter, and it's not a political matter. It's just a human matter, and I think that's great. I think I would be excited if other leaders of faith and spirituality and philosophy would join him. But yeah, you wouldn't think it doesn't seem like his forum, right? But he's going just to show that.
Josh, I don't know. Are you do you have any background in Catholicism at all?
You're muted, Josh.
My mom's family was Catholic, so
okay. So the Pope is a Franciscan, and Franciscans, one of the saints that they really follow closely, after Christ, of course, and that saint followed Christ, was Saint Francis of Assisi. And Saint Francis of Assisi is basically a saint of the natural world and the natural interactions. So from a Franciscan is going to be a lot different than a Benedictine believer that kind of comes from that idea. So I would say that of the popes that came recently, he's definitely from a background that's more about the interactions in nature and being a part of nature than some of the former popes that were from different sects, Jesuits or Benedictines or whatever. So,
oh, that's interesting. But yeah, I'm glad to see it elevated and just using his platform in such a responsible way, but it's really not. I don't think he's elected to enable his voice on his platform like that. I'm sure he feels spiritually motivated and driven, and I think that underlying driver for him to be present at COP28 is maybe it'll get a lot of folks thinking. Even a lot of people who aren't Christians or very spiritual feel like the Pope is, his voice is important, whether they agree or disagree. I think a lot of people in this world, different faiths and stuff, they realize the authority and the voice and the platform that the Pope has in this world. So it's really, I think it's cool. We'll see.
Well, hey, thanks, guys. I'm going to close this in a prayer quick, if that's okay. So,
one last thing, Dave. I'm excited. Maybe I can catch up with you sometime about the Canadian conference you went to and learn more about that Indigenous. And I've been digging around and shooting a few things at Paula. You tried to connect me on that to get her some names and people. Did you forward her anything on that, or can you maybe share?
I forwarded her 4 contacts, and I haven't heard yet. She just got off the line, so I don't know exactly. I think Chuck. I don't know if Chuck is listening or not, but I think Chuck was on the line. I missed a phone call on Thursday. We were having a employee review, and I just kind of skipped it, so I don't know exactly what happened in that phone call. But I think they're moving forward. So
cool. All right. Well, I'm gonna bounce. I hope you guys have a thankful, happy giving.
You too, Josh.
And since we're not celebrating Thanksgiving anymore, we'll celebrate Happy Giving and be thankful about it. And a safe time too. There's lots of tension, and just keep your wellness about you. And it's okay if your older siblings or your parents are perfect. Just let them remain perfect through the holiday. And it doesn't matter what you do, you're always going to be the child who doesn't know anything, or the little brother that's wrong or whatever. So there's always going to be that. And by the way, a lot of people don't care about what you do, so talk about them. That's what they want to hear.
Oh yeah, that's true. 100%.
But yeah, man, bring the joy in your heart and spread it around, and have a safe holiday, you guys. Thanks for
you too, Josh.
Yeah, talk to you later.
Hey, Josh. Josh, you still there, bud?
Yeah.
Hey, mind praying with me before we go?
Absolutely, let's do it.
Yeah, God, thanks for letting us be able to have a voice to share with others. Help us to be able to listen to others. Help us to be amazed by you, and amazed that you allow us to do any part of the work that you're doing here on this planet. Help us to want to love. Help us to be slow to judge. Help us to be slow to convict. Just, we're amazed by you, and help us to live in ever more amazement. Amen.
Amen.
Hey, see you, brother.
Take care, Dave.